From Carter Curricula here, where I am in the business of savoring our shared humanity through the reading of poetry, specifically poetry written by dead poets. Today I want to take a moment to go on live and connect with you and give you a spiritual talk. Sundays I'd like to begin, at least for the next few months, a spiritual talk that is connected to the poems from the dead poets that we are taking a look at. And we're still taking a look at Nikki Giovanni's poetry from the book Black Talk, Black Feeling, Black Judgment. We've taken a look at 4 poems there, and man, it's been an exciting time. I hope that you have the opportunity to at least peruse a few of the poems that we took a look at. And so this morning I want to take a look at a spiritual text and tie that to what I'm learning to be Nikki Giovanni's vision for spiritual rebirth. And I want to connect that text. I want to first talk about a text from Jesus and Nicodemus in the book of John and the Bible. And then I'm going to talk about some of the texts that we've taken a look at, the 4 poems, and see how that ties into the talk that Jesus had with Nicodemus. And then last but not least, I want to sort of apply those principles or ideas to our everyday life and see how that goes for us. Because it is my intention that we savor our shared humanity, that we eventually understand the deep spiritual underpinnings of all of our lives and savor it, because that is what it means to be truly human, especially in a time period where it seems as if our humanity is in some ways attempting to be stripped away from us. And so let's start. Let's take a look at the story by John. Jesus talks to Nicodemus. Let's talk about that just real quick. Jesus and Nicodemus had a conversation in the book of John, and the conversation started with Nicodemus asking Jesus a question. The question was, how is it that I can enter into the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus says that Nicodemus and anyone else who'd like to enter the kingdom of heaven would have to be born again, right? Not necessarily by going back into their mother's womb and then coming out again. A different type of rebirth, a spiritual rebirth, the type of rebirth that only can be wrought, can be began, can be given, can be birthed by the divine, right? And so Nicodemus goes away from there. He doesn't really quite understand what Jesus is talking about, as I recall, and he leaves from there. Now, what does that have to do with Nikki Giovanni's vision of rebirth? Now, I'm not a Giovanni expert, right? I've read a few of her poems, and I've analyzed 4 of them here. But based upon the 4, I'm starting to get an idea of what her spiritual underpinnings are for her poetry. And those spiritual underpinnings are constantly in regard to sort of well, at least there's a sense that there's this idea of rebirth, especially early on in her poetry. The poems that I've been taking a look at are from 1968 to about 1970, at least the publication date is between those 2 times. And so she's talking often about a rebirth. She never says rebirth in any of her poems. She never uses the term rebirth or born again, none of that. But she does insinuate in a few different ways. Well, the first way that she insinuates this idea of rebirth is she has a gentleman who's in a socially oppressed people group asking questions, in essence, so that he might be able to have the same experience as those who aren't oppressed. And that's on hearing the girl with the flaxen hair. And so this guy is having an experience where he is working all the time, and his lover's working all the time. They never have time to do sweet things in life. They never have time for leisure, so they never could really foster their relationship. And I see that to be a rebirth in essence, because the speaker is travailing, trying to figure out this way to claim or reclaim his own power. And that's the rebirth that Giovanni, I think, has mentions in every single one of the 4 poems that we've taken a look at. The rebirth of their own power. So another Giovanni poem that comes to mind is I choose, You Came Too. You Came Too is about this person who's seeking a companion, somebody to love, somebody to understand them, somebody to be friends with. And they go into this crowd and find this companion, and essentially they leave from this companion's or leave from the crowd, but they come, but the companion, the speaker's companion, comes too. Right, this person that the speaker meets from the crowd actually joins them, and so they found that person found what they were looking for. Seek and you shall find. And ultimately, this seeking and this finding is the individual speaker's ability to grasp power for themselves, to gain in their power, to gain in how they do things in life. Things aren't done to them. They go and seek. Things aren't done to them. They go and find for themselves. They're not just allowing the world to sort of come upon them. They're actually moving out into the world and making things happen in the world. Now, there's another text. I won't go over all 4 of them because one of them slips my mind at the moment. I don't have them with me, but another text that comes to mind is the text that we took a look at today, and that is Black Power. And I think it's like for the members, the Black Panthers of the East or something like that. But Black Power. So this poem is about an individual who's just chilling with at least one other companion, maybe a few companions. They likely are females, and a cop comes. The people that are chilling, they are doing nothing wrong. They're just talking and standing. That's it. And the cop comes, and the cop is upset. He gives the speaker a directive. He says, basically, get out of here. And then he moves on. He goes on and says, and take those whores with you. And the speaker is like, whoa. I have never seen this thing that happened. And the speaker starts off this text and says, this was a miracle. This individual named Tyrone, who's the hero of the poem, pounces on the cop like a panther. And the speaker goes on and says, we didn't know that a panther had left. No one knew a panther had left from a zoo or a circus. The panther was out and the panther was loose. And so this text is another text that shows that there's a spiritual rebirth in this guy, Tyrone. A miracle has taken place, a spiritual rebirth, and that spiritual rebirth is the claiming of his own power. So each of the 3, the 4th text slips my mind, but the 4th text I know still has this same concept. It was I'm not lonely. That's the text, the 4th text. The 4th text is I'm not lonely, and that text is about an individual who has a breakup in an intimate relationship, and now they're in this bed by themselves, the bed being the symbol or being the pinnacle of the relationship, right? The pinnacle of the relationship is the bed, right? It's the place where intimacy takes place. And this individual who was essentially dumped, it seemed, in the poem, is not lonely, and claiming that, denying themselves of the feeling of loneliness and saying, look, I'm a different person, man. I'm not going to be lonely just because I'm alone in this bed. I am enough for myself. And it sort of harkens back to Walt Whitman's little stanza that I went over a couple days ago, where he talks about the fact that a person should feel that they are enough they should be content in their own existence. Nothing more, nothing less. If they get something more, they're still content. They get something less, they're still content. If all eyes are on them, they're content. If no eyes are on them, they're content. And so what we find here is in Giovanni's poem is that the individual has reclaimed their power, reclaimed their entire power. No one else has power over their life. No one else has the power to make them feel powerless. No one else has the power to make them feel lonely. They have the claim for their own power, and they're taking that claim and owning it for themselves. Now, let's take a look and see how we can apply these ideas into our everyday lives and make some sense of it, just because when we're walking around and talking with people and just doing, going to the grocery store, stepping foot through the threshold at our workplace. Let's talk about how this principle, this spiritual principle, which is the rebirth of an individual, happens through the taking of their own power. Let's talk about how that spiritual principle can be applied in everyday life. Well, in everyday life, there are individuals, in which case, in the text, Black Panther, or Black Power, excuse me, by Nikki Giovanni. There's a bully that's taking place. The bully is the cop, symbolic of the person who is in an authority position and just a bully. And Giovanni says that the idea is that Tyrone pounced on this guy, essentially claiming their own power. And I'm not advocating any violence. I'm not saying any violence at all. This is purely just metaphorical. And so the idea is that you don't be bullied. Don't allow yourself to be bullied. Go on the offensive against those who are bullying you. Don't take the mistreatment of another, whether that's in a relationship or that's at the workhouse. Power. And that's essentially what we have in Nikki Giovanni, and that's what we have in claiming in the rebirth. The rebirth is a claiming of your own power. Today, claim or reclaim your own power. I'll see you tomorrow on the analysis that I do on Seduction by Nikki Giovanni. Until then, I'll see you on the next one.